Hey guys, we're back with another EDH gameplay video, and before we get into the game, I'd just like to ask that you all like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out. As you know, we have the goal to hit 1,000 subs by next May, but I'm adding the goal to hit 400 subs, and that's just whenever. When that happens, I'll be doubling the channel's content output. So if you want more content, hit that sub button. With all that said, let's get straight into the gameplay. Jordan is running his Tymna Ikra Turbo Life Gain deck. He opened with a Soul's Attendant, Crested Sunmare, Death to the Deathless, Tefprot, Sylvan Library, Forest, and Swamp. This week, Nash is piloting Yarok, a deck that looks to abuse creature ETBs for value. He opened with a Ravenous Chupacabra, Land and War Elves, Polluted Delta, Agadeem's Awakening, Limdwell's Vault, Wood Elves, and a Command Tower. Ryan is piloting his Teysa Karlov deck, a black-white Aristocrats deck. He opened with a Tainted Plains, Phyrexian Tower, Swamp, Mana Crypt, Enlightened Tutor, Esper Sentinel, and Imp's Mischief. Jordan starts his turn off by playing a Forest and then passes. Nash starts his turn off by playing a Forest, followed by Land and War Elves. Ryan starts his turn off by playing a Swamp, followed by a Mana Crypt. He then casts a Zulaport Cutthroat. On Jordan's turn, he plays a Swamp, and then casts his Sylvan Library. Nash starts his turn off with a Polluted Delta, cracking it to get a Watery Grave, which he shocks in. He then taps out to play Wood Elves, getting his Breeding Pool into play tapped. On Ryan's upkeep, he fails the Crypt Trigger, taking 3 damage. On Ryan's main phase, he plays a Tainted Field, and then casts Elenda Dusk Rose. He then moves to combat and attacks Jordan with Zulaport Cutthroat. On Jordan's draw step, he decides to take 8 from his Sylvan Library. Jordan then plays a Godless Shrine as his land for turn, followed by Soul's Attendant, and Valentine, Dean of the Vein. Nash starts his turn off with a Command Tower, followed by casting his commander, Yarok. On Ryan's turn, he fails his Crypt Trigger, taking another 3. Ryan then follows this up with a Phyrexian Tower, and then casts his commander, Teysa Karlov. Jordan starts his turn off with a Verdant Catacombs, using it to get his Triome. He then taps out in order to cast Camball. Nash starts his turn off with Agadeem, the Undead Crypt, as his land for turn, casts Ravenous Chupacabra, and chooses to kill both Linda Dusk Rose and Valentine. On upkeep, before the Crypt Trigger, Ryan casts his Enlightened Tutor, putting his Skull Clamp into hand. Ryan casts his Skull Clamp, taking 2 damage from Camball. Ryan then casts Demonic Tutor, taking another 2 damage from Camball. On Jordan's turn, he plays a Forest, and then casts Nature's Lore. He gets a Murmuring Bosk into play tapped. On EOT, Nash casts Limdwell's Vault. On Nash's turn, he plays Verdant Catacombs as his land for turn. Nash then casts Fell Stinger, having a double exploit trigger, sacrificing his Wood Elves and his Fell Stinger, drawing 4 cards and losing 4 life. He then cracks his Verdant Catacombs, getting a Forest into play. He then casts Guardian Project. On Ryan's upkeep, he takes 3 from his Crypt. He then follows this up by casting Ministrate of Obligation. He then immediately clamps the Ministrate of Obligation. He draws 4 cards off the Skull Clamp death trigger and creates 4 tokens off the Afterlife trigger. He drains both Nash and Jordan for 2 life off his Zulaport Cutthroat triggers. He follows this up by playing Command Tower as his land for turn. He then uses his Phyrexian Tower to sacrifice one of the tokens, creating 2 Zulaport Cutthroat triggers and making 2 black mana. Ryan then attempts to Skull Clamp one of the Spirit tokens. Jordan responds by casting Mortality Spear. Ryan then casts Imp's Mischief, taking 2 damage from the Camball trigger, and redirects it to his Sylvan Library. Then the clamp is successfully equipped to the creature. It dies. Ryan gets 4 draws, and each player takes 2 damage and Ryan gains 2 life. On Jordan's turn, he plays Overgrown Tomb as his land. He then casts a Resplendent Angel. On Nash's turn, he taps out, casting Agent of Treachery, drawing 2 cards off Guardian Project, and he chooses to steal Skull Clamp and Soul's Attendant. But Jordan replies by casting Teferi's Protection, phasing out his Soul's Attendant. On Ryan's upkeep, he loses his Crypt Trigger and takes 3. He then plays an Isolated Chapel. Ryan uses his Phyrexian Tower to make 2 black mana, causing 2 Zulaport Cutthroat triggers. Ryan then casts Sling Gang Lieutenant, creating 2 Goblin tokens. He follows this up with a Marsh Flitter, creating 2 more Goblin tokens. On Jordan's upkeep after he phases in, Ryan sacrifices his 4 Goblins to his Sling Gang Lieutenant to deal 4 damage to Jordan and gain 4 life, causing him to have 8 Zulaport Cutthroat triggers, draining each player for 8 and gaining him 8 life. Jordan starts the turn off by playing his Ancient Tomb. Jordan then taps out to cast both Ikra and Tymna. Jordan then attacks Nash with Soul Attendant and Ryan with his Angel, dealing 3 damage to Ryan and 1 damage to Nash. Jordan gains 4 life off the Ikra triggers. On end step, because Jordan gained 5 life, he creates a 4/4 Angel token. On Nash's turn, he starts things off with a Dothy Voidwalker, getting 2 Guardian Project triggers, followed up by Fibblethip, getting a total of 4 draws, 2 from Guardian Project, 2 from Fibblethip. On EOT, Ryan flashes out his Solitude, paying its evoke cost, but Nash responds by casting Arcane Denial, countering it. On Ryan's upkeep, he draws 2 cards, and Nash draws 1 card from the Arcane Denial. Turn, he casts an Idyllic Tutor, taking 2 from Campbell. He then follows this up by casting his Solemnity, taking another 2 damage from Campbell. He then casts Imp Seal, taking a total of 4 damage, 2 from Campbell, 2 from the Imp Seal, and passes. On Jordan's turn, he starts things off with a Horizon Canopy as land for turn. Jordan swings with everything at Ryan. Ryan blocks the 2 angels with his 2 flyers and then double blocks Ikra. Jordan responds by using his Seat of the Empire in order to kill Sling Gang Lieutenant, which Ryan sacrifices in response to deal 1 and heal 1. After all the life gain and damage is dealt, Ryan ends up taking a total of 6, and Jordan's life total goes up to 48. Jordan then casts Crested Sunmare on his second main phase. He then moves to end step, creating an angel and a horse. On Nash's turn, he activates his Dothy Voidwalker in order to cast Ryan's Imperial Seal. He takes 2 from Campbell and 2 from the Imperial Seal. Nash then casts Scoot Swarm, triggering his Guardian Project. He then follows this up with a Lotus Cobra, drawing another 2 cards, and then he casts Springbloom Druid, drawing off the Guardian Project, sacrificing 2 lands, getting 4 lands into play, causing 8 triggers on both the Scoot Swarm and the Lotus Cobra. He lets the Lotus Cobra triggers resolve first, getting 8 mana, using 4 of it to Ghostly Flicker his Springbloom Druid and his Agent of Treachery, getting 4 draws off Guardian Project, stealing both Jordan's Angel and Soul's Attendant. He then has 2 more Spring Bloom activations, which he gets 4 more lands into play, causing 8 more Lotus Cobra triggers and 8 more Scoot Swarm triggers. He then lets all the triggers resolve and follows this up with a Forest as land for turn. This causes 32 Scoot Swarm triggers and 2 Lotus Cobra triggers. He then casts a Deadeye Navigator, drawing off the Guardian Project, soul bonding it to the Springbloom Druid. He then casts Elves of Deep Shadow, drawing off his Guardian Project triggers. He bounces his Springbloom Druid in order to get 4 more lands into play and drawing 2 cards off Guardian Project. The 4 lands entering the battlefield cause 8 Scoot Swarm triggers per Scoot Swarm for a total of just shy of 300 Scoot Swarms. Then Lotus Cobra generates 8 mana off the lands entering the battlefield. He uses this 8 mana plus the 4 he already had in pool in order to cast Finale of Devastation X10. He then swings with 100 Scoots at each player and kills them.